The new head coach of the New York Giants is Joe Judge. I'm pausing for a second so some of you can Wikipedia Joe Judge, because a lot of Giant fans, the reaction was understandable. Who? Wait, not Aaron Judge, Joe Judge, correct? And this is such an interesting hire. There's so many layers to dissect in this, but I'm going to start off with this. Joe Judge is a smart football guy. He comes from the Belichick family, and what I'm about to say has nothing to do with his ability as a coach and nothing to do with his football acumen. But what are the New York Giants doing? I have no idea what the New York Giants, who I want to remind people used to be one of the golden standards in how to run a franchise in the National Football League, how they are operating. Because you look at this offseason, this was a unique coaching carousel. Because you not only had great candidates, but you also had a lot of candidates with not only head coaching experience, but that were successful head coaches. You had Ron Rivera, who is now in your division, who thought would be a perfect fit, especially with Dave Gettleman remaining as the general manager. You had Mike McCarthy, who also had won a Super Bowl. And then you had Matt Rule, who was the Giants' frontrunner, the Baylor head coach. Now he's signing in Carolina a 7-year deal for $60 million. And it's hard because you don't want to kill Joe Judge because everything you hear about him, he's a great coach. And we've seen great special teams coaches such as John Harbaugh have success as NFL head coaches. But the problem is this is the New York Giants. They're supposed to be one of the high standards in the NFL. And they had multiple head coaching candidates. And this has to be concerning if you're a Giants fan, because think about this. You had great head coaches available, and it seemed like none of them had any interest in this Giant job. What does that tell you? They're not sold on Dave Gettleman, and that should be alarming. One of my biggest criticisms of the Giants was that they should have moved on from Dave Gettleman if they felt it was going to impact their chance to bring in a great head coaching candidate. And you look coming into this offseason, I would have made the case for these head coaches that the Giant job was probably the best opening job for a couple of reasons. The first thing being they had a good young quarterback on a rookie contract. They had a star running back in the backfield on a rookie contract. And it's also the New York Giants with great ownership. But we've seen Ron Rivera go to Washington, a franchise that is known for terrible ownership. And I would make the case Dwayne Haskins isn't as talented as Daniel Jones at this point. We've seen Matt Rule go to Carolina, where they don't even know who their quarterback's going to be next year. And we've seen Mike McCarthy go to Dallas. They're not sure what they're going to do with Dak's contract and if Dak's hit his ceiling. So I looked at this situation saying, you look at all these great candidates and the Giants end up with Joe Judge, not even Josh McDaniels. Because even though you might be worried about McDaniels as a head coach, you know one thing, he works with quarterbacks. And for Judge, who's a wide receivers coach, he might understand the offense. I would be leery about him handling an offense because this is a big responsibility. He hasn't even been a coordinator, really. I mean, he's been a special teams coordinator, but he hasn't handled an offense. And now he's got to handle an offensive, defensive, special teams, and the New York media. I just don't think it's going to work. I think Judge is a guy who, if you hear everyone from the Patriot organization, they believe he can be a great head coach. But I just think for where the Giants are right now and the pressure that's going to be on Judge, it's going to be very difficult for him to succeed in this market. Because I think the media is going to be on this from day one, and they are not going to give a break, and I think they are going to kill the Giants for this hiring. I mean, you look at the Jets with Adam Gase, and I wasn't a fan of it, but some people in the beginning were fans of the hiring. I think a lot of people have kind of turned on that if you watch, but I'll say this, at least Adam Gase, the reason the Jets hired him, it made sense. They were looking for an offensive guy for their young quarterback, and the reason they kept him after a disastrous first year, in my opinion, is because they want to give some continuity to Sam Darnold. They're trying to do everything to develop Sam Darnold. This offseason, what did they do? They brought in Joe Douglas. What was his forte in Philadelphia? It was the draft, which they need to improve on. What does Philadelphia draft arguably better than anyone else? Offensive line. What do the New York Jets need? Offensive line. So you look at the Jets, even though they are a mess, they look like they at least have a plan and they're on the same page. For the Giants, I don't know what they're doing. You still have Gettleman in charge. Is he going to work well with Joe Judge? Is Joe Judge going to be involved in the personnel decisions, or is he just going to coach? I mean, there are so many questions about this, and I would be fascinated to know, did they not want to bring in Rule because of the money, the $60 million? Did they not want to bring in Rule or some of these other guys because they'd have to relinquish control from Gettleman? There are so many factors in this giant decision, and the biggest reaction I see people giving is, wait, what? That's not what you want when you hire a head coach. You want to be, okay, I can get that hiring, or okay, it makes sense from this standpoint. It's not a good sign when the first reaction from 90% of your fan base is they have to rush to Google to figure out who Joe Judge is. Some of them in New York are saying, wait a minute, is that a typo? Did we bring in Aaron Judge to be the head coach? I mean, I thought he played baseball. So I think Mike Judge, I hope for the best. I think he can be a decent coach eventually in this league. He's a very smart guy, but the track record from Belichick disciples, it has not been good. Mangini, Weiss, I mean, you just go down the list, Crennel. It's not been good. It's not like the Andy Reid coaching tree. And outside of Brian Flores, who I think did an incredible job in Miami this year, the Belichick coaching tree does not exactly have the great success. And I think the biggest reason people are disappointed with the Giants is because they want a head coach. They've gone the coordinator route twice back to back, and it's been a disaster. And now they had an opportunity to get not only a head coach, but there was a lot of options out there. I didn't think Lincoln Riley was ever going to leave Oklahoma. I think the only way that he would have left would have been for an incredible amount of money with the Cowboys, but you have to remember how much money he's making in Oklahoma. He's basically in a position where he could be in the playoff every year. I didn't think he would go. I think Rule understood that he'd kind of tapped out at Baylor. That was probably the top he was going to get, but when a team offers you $60 million in a 7-year contract, it's telling you that they want you there for the long haul, because it's like the John Gruden contract. They're not going to fire you halfway through and then eat all that money in the back end. They're going to keep you there for the long haul. Carolina knows it's going to be a process to rebuild that team, so they are committing to him long term. I don't know if the Giants are going to give the length of the contract that Rule got, but I think that's a big reason why he is there. But you had Ron Rivera, and it brings up a great question of mine. Was the relationship between Rivera and Gettleman that great? Because I know they went to a Super Bowl together. But the second Ron Rivera got fired, I was like most people. I'm like, oh, he's going to the Giants because he's got a good young quarterback. He's worked with Gettleman, and he chose the Redskins. Do the Redskins have better ownership than the Giants? No. Do the Redskins have a better roster than the Giants? No. Do the Redskins have a better general manager than the Giants? I would say no. I would even say quarterback. I think after the first year, I feel confident in Daniel Jones. I don't feel confident in Dwayne Haskins. And yet, Ron Rivera chose the Redskins over the Giants. I mean, you look at Mike McCarthy now. This division, all of a sudden for the Giants, you look at the coaching. You got Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys, Doug Peterson with the Eagles, Ron Rivera with the Redskins, and the Giants to go up against those three, against coaches that have all been to a Super Bowl. A couple have won a Super Bowl. They're going to go with Joe Judge. I mean, do you see the discrepancy? To win a division, you need the quarterback and the head coach. Look at the division winners this year. You can make a case that 8 out of 8 or 7 of the 8 had the best quarterback and the best head coach in that division. I mean, you look at the Giants right now. Do you think they have the best quarterback in the division? I mean, could Daniel Jones develop into the best quarterback in the division? It's potentially there. But do they have the best head coach? I don't think so. And if you don't like Dave Gettleman, this could be a big concern, because you might fall into the trap that the New York Jets fell into for the last decade. Because kill the Jets for keeping Adam Gase, but at least they're keeping some continuity and keeping the head coach and the general manager together. Because forever, the Jets kept flip-flopping the general manager and the head coach. Because what are the Giants going to do at the end of the next year? If Dave Gettleman cannot rebuild this defense, if this defense is again terrible, if he cannot give weapons to Daniel Jones and you feel like you have to move on from Gettleman, does that mean you have to get a new head coach next year too? Or are you going to limit your general manager search to guys that will work with Joe Judge? It's not a great situation because think about it. If you fire Gettleman, then you're going to limit it who you can bring in because of Joe Judge, or you're going to fire Joe Judge and then you'll be on your fourth head coach in 5 years. You'll be Cleveland. There's a reason why no one wants that Cleveland job. It's because they know Cleveland, you look at the turnover. It's 9 coaches in 12 years. They want some job security. Rule wanted job security when he came out of college. That's why he signed a 7-year contract with Carolina. That's why Ron Rivera went to Washington, in my opinion, because they know they've been so bad for so long. He can get his own run of the place. He can be in charge of the personnel. He can be very influential in how that roster is built. You look at Mike McCarthy. I do think there'll be a little bit of a pushback with Jerry Jones at times, but this is a guy who has won a Super Bowl. He has an acumen. He has a background, and I do think he's going to be in a big part of the everyday operations. I mean, when you look at Joe Judge, and once again, do I think he is a bad coach? Absolutely not. But I just think for the timing, for being the head coach of the Giants at this delicate stage for them in this franchise, it just doesn't make sense. Everything the Giants should be doing right now should be investing in Daniel Jones' future. And if you're telling me their best choice is a special teams coach and a wide receivers coach and not a quarterback coordinator or an offensive coordinator or better yet a head coach, I don't know what this organization is doing. But once again, we have to give Joe Judge the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he can prove us wrong. Maybe he can be the next John Harbaugh. But when you step back today and you look at the New York Giants, their first reaction isn't what it was about a decade ago, saying this is one of the premier franchises, not only in the NFL, but in sports, the way it's operated, the way it's run, the way it's organized. To now, you look at the Giants, you feel more like Cleveland today than you do New York. You feel like you're a little bit of a mess, more chaos, and you don't feel like you have a great sense of direction forward. Because the Giants had opportunities to get coaches that had worked with Gettleman, had won a Super Bowl, were the best college prospect that many people thought coming out in Matt Rule, and the Giants couldn't get anyone. The one thing I will say about this hire is it will have a huge impact on the direction of the Giants and the development of Daniel Jones over the next couple of seasons. And for the Giants and their front office, they better be right.